The morning of September 11, 2001, dawned like any other, but by the time the sun had set, the world would never be the same. What started as a typical Tuesday morning for millions of Americans quickly turned into a national tragedy, as a series of coordinated terrorist attacks struck the heart of the United States. The events of that fateful day not only claimed nearly 3,000 lives but also forever altered the course of history, reshaping the world in profound and unexpected ways. The attacks were meticulously planned by Al-Qaeda, a radical Islamist extremist group led by Osama bin Laden. At 8:46 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11, a Boeing 767 en route from Boston to Los Angeles, crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center in New York City. The impact left a massive hole in the building, sending flames and thick black smoke billowing into the sky. Just 17 minutes later, at 9:03 a.m., United Airlines Flight 175, another Boeing 767, slammed into the South Tower of the World Trade Center. The explosion was deafening, and the world watched in stunned silence as both towers burned, the lives of thousands of people trapped inside, with no clear escape. At the same time, the events unfolding in New York were only part of a much larger and more terrifying plan. At 9:37 a.m., American Airlines Flight 77, a Boeing 757 traveling from Washington, D.C., to Los Angeles, crashed into the Pentagon, the iconic military headquarters of the United States. The impact sent shockwaves through the nation's defense center, killing 125 people inside the Pentagon, in addition to the 59 passengers and crew members aboard the plane. The Pentagon, an enduring symbol of U.S. power and security, had been struck, and the unthinkable had become a grim reality. Meanwhile, United Airlines Flight 93, a fourth plane hijacked by terrorists, was headed for Washington, D.C., but the passengers aboard Flight 93 would never allow their fate to be sealed without a fight. A group of brave passengers, aware of the fate that had befallen the other hijacked flights, heroically attempted to retake control of the plane from the terrorists. In a struggle that would last only a few minutes, the passengers fought back, forcing the plane to crash into a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, at 10:03 a.m. Although everyone on board perished, their courage prevented what would likely have been an even greater tragedy, as Flight 93 was believed to be targeting either the White House or the U.S. Capitol. As the day unfolded, the world watched in horror. News stations broadcasted live footage of the World Trade Center towers burning, people jumping to their deaths to escape the inferno, and heroic first responders rushing into the chaos, unaware of the collapse that was soon to come. At 9:59 a.m., the South Tower of the World Trade Center, weakened by the intense heat of the fire, finally gave way and collapsed, sending a massive plume of dust and debris billowing into the streets of Lower Manhattan. Less than half an hour later, at 10:28 a.m., the North Tower followed suit, collapsing in a cloud of destruction. The devastation in New York was unprecedented. Ground Zero, as the site of the World Trade Center came to be known, was a massive pile of rubble. The once iconic Twin Towers, symbols of American economic power, were reduced to debris. As the dust settled, emergency crews, firefighters, police officers, and paramedics began the grim task of searching for survivors amidst the rubble. Sadly, the majority of those trapped inside the towers, including many first responders, did not make it out alive. In total, the collapse of the towers alone claimed the lives of over 2,700 people, with many more injured. The immediate aftermath of the attacks was filled with confusion, shock, and grief. For the families of those lost, the day became a day of mourning, but also of resilience. Loved ones and strangers alike united to support the grieving, and the spirit of unity that emerged in the wake of the attacks was palpable across the United States and around the world. The iconic image of the American flag being hoisted by firefighters amidst the rubble of Ground Zero would become a symbol of hope and resilience. The attacks of 9/11 didn't just affect the victims and their families, they altered the entire global landscape. In the days following the attacks, the United States launched what would become the War on Terror, a global campaign to dismantle terrorist networks and prevent future attacks. The U.S. military launched Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan to remove the Taliban from power and target al-Qaeda operatives, including Osama bin Laden. This marked the beginning of nearly 2 decades of U.S. military involvement in the region, which would come to shape U.S. foreign policy for years to come. In the United States, the attacks led to sweeping changes in national security. The creation of the Department of Homeland Security (DHS) and the implementation of the USA Patriot Act were designed to enhance the government's ability to prevent terrorist attacks. At airports, passengers began to experience an unprecedented level of security, with stricter protocols for screening and more stringent checks for potential threats. Air travel, which had once been seen as a routine part of modern life, was now a source of constant vigilance. On a global scale, 9/11 united many nations in the fight against terrorism. Countries around the world, including those in Europe and the Middle East, pledged their support to the U.S. and cooperated in efforts to curb terrorist activity. The fight against terrorism would become the defining conflict of the 21st century, shaping the politics and policies of many nations. However, it also led to significant challenges, such as the rise of extremist groups like ISIS, the ongoing conflict in Afghanistan, and the complex dynamics of the Middle East. At the personal level, 9/11 affected millions of people who lived through the tragedy. In the years following the attacks, many first responders, who had worked tirelessly in the rubble of Ground Zero, would later suffer from long-term health issues due to exposure to toxic dust and debris. Families of those lost on that day, as well as survivors, would have to navigate the long road of grief, loss, and recovery. The psychological and emotional toll of 9/11 on individuals and communities could not be underestimated. Despite the heartbreak and trauma, 9/11 also gave rise to stories of courage, heroism, and hope. The passengers of Flight 93, who fought back against their hijackers, became symbols of bravery. Firefighters, police officers, and paramedics who risked their lives to rescue others in the midst of the chaos were hailed as heroes. Ordinary citizens opened their hearts and homes to those in need, and countless individuals around the world came together to support the U.S. during its time of need. In the years since, the memory of 9/11 has been preserved through memorials, museums, and public ceremonies. The National September 11th Memorial and Museum in New York City stands as a poignant reminder of the lives lost and the courage shown by so many in the face of unimaginable terror. Every year, on the anniversary of the attacks, people around the world take a moment of silence to reflect on the events of 9/11 and the lessons it taught us about unity, resilience, and the importance of protecting freedom. The tragedy of September 11, 2001, remains one of the darkest days in modern history. Yet, it is also a testament to the strength of the human spirit. As the years pass, the memory of the victims and the heroes of 9/11 will continue to inspire generations to come. Though the attacks changed the world in ways that can never be undone, they also reminded us of the importance of coming together in the face of adversity, supporting each other, and honoring the sacrifices of those who lost their lives.